Well, hello everybody. This is Empire Coins and Collectibles, and this is Ron. I have a real treat for you today. I have Michael Forader on the phone with me, and he has contributed to the findings of the different varieties of double die reverses on Lincoln's formative years. And we're probably going to get into that as part of the interview, but first I'd like to introduce him to you. Hey, Michael, how you doing?
Nice to be with you today.
That's fantastic. So, I'm always curious how, where, and when did you start collecting?
Well, I'll tell you what, I have to blame it all on my grandfather. When we were living in Connecticut as a young man, about 7 or 8 years old, I saw that on an ashtray that he had a 2 cent piece taped to the bottom of it.
Oh, that's
And I
interesting.
asked him what that was, and he goes, "That's an old coin, 1864 2 cent piece." After that, I was like checking every ashtray in his house, looking for other coins, and he had plenty of them for me to see. And that started me on at 8 years old collecting for over 60 years now. And I have had just so much fun doing it over the years.
Wow. Did he do that intentionally to pique your curiosity, or is that just something quirky he did?
It was just something quirky he did.
Hmm.
My great grandfather ran a bread business in Connecticut, and they took in the 30s and during early World War II, and they made lots of money and had lots of funds. And my grandfather was a huge stamp collector, but I did not enjoy stamps like he did.
Hmm.
I enjoyed coins, and that was my start in. Uh, I was checking pocket change and finding Buffalo nickels every once in a while, Mercury dimes.
About when was this?
This was in the early 60s,
Early 60s. Wow.
early
Wow.
60s, and you could still find Buffalo nickels and Mercury dimes in regular circulation. So
Yeah, if I remember correctly, there was a department store called Magic Mart. I don't know if they were in your part of the country, but they were kind of like the predecessor of Kmart. You could actually go and buy these coins in the late 60s, early 70s, and they were, silver dimes and quarters and halves. So, yeah. So,
I was very disappointed when they took the silver out of the dimes and the quarters and the $50 because I really enjoyed doing that when I was
yeah,
a
yeah.
younger man.
I'm right there with you. To be quite honest, I've said to my viewers many times that I just literally hate the Zinkans because they corrode, they outgas, they crack open, and any coins that we're going to have, if they're not taken special care of, they're going to just be nothing left of them in the next 5 or 10 years. They just don't stand well like the old copper cents used to.
Absolutely true. And I still I'm sorry, I still pick up pennies off the ground, much to the depression of my wife when I she goes, economic goodness. But anyway, do enjoy. I still pick up coins and find stuff everywhere. But you're absolutely right. The copper coated zinc coins of today and the plaid are just they just don't hold up as
No,
in the way of in keeping their originality.
right.
They get pretty torn up by just regular use.
Yeah, the zinc rot just bubbles out and it looks like the crater of the moon. Hey, there's something else I want the viewing audience to know about you, and I want to thank you for your service. You're a retired naval officer, aren't you?
I am. I went to school at Florida Institute of Technology for and graduated and immediately went into the United States Navy in a new fledgling program in 1976 called the Naval Oceanography Command, and I was one of seven. I was chosen in 1977, one of five from the civilian part of the country, and most of the folks that went into this discipline were from the Naval Academy, and I did try to go to the Naval Academy, but things didn't work out. I did go into the Navy, and I was a meteorologist, oceanographer, and a hydrologist, and
Wow.
and it was classified. I was classified as a geophysics officer, and
Hmm.
did a 20-year career in the Navy and really enjoyed it, and ended up retiring as an 04, which was a lieutenant commander in 1994.
Well, again, thank you for your service. Were you ever stationed over in Hawaii?
I never was. I visited Hawaii many times. I've been to the USS Arizona Memorial and have lots of memorabilia from it. Um, I did take, and when I first went into the Navy, the country was in a position where it was at the end of Vietnam, and I went to Panama, and I was stationed in Panama for 2 years, and I surveyed the north and south coast of the Panama Canal.
Wow, that had to be very interesting. Did you pick up
Absolutely,
did you pick up any coins down there?
absolutely.
I
I
figured.
was astounded when I went to. I never did much gambling as a young man, but I saw these had a couple of bucks because I was now a commissioned officer, and the Hilton Casino downtown in Panama City, where I picked up some half dollars to play slot machines, and almost a handful of them were 40% silver. So I came home with over $900 face value, 40% silver Panamanian half dollars.
How about that? Yeah. You just have to know where to look. Sometimes Lady Luck's on your side.
Yeah, and they did. I had lots of coins that I had got from down
Yeah.
there that were memorable.
Yeah. Well, let's fast forward in time, and somehow you find yourself in Lexington, Kentucky. Is that correct? Later in your life?
Actually, we moved here in 2000, the end of 2008, beginning of 2009, here to Hodgenville, Kentucky, which is just south of Elizabethtown, and we have we resided here, and then my wife and I eventually settled here. Our daughters live here in this vicinity. In fact, our daughter lives right across the street, and we have really enjoyed being in Kentucky. Very interesting area.
Beautiful state.
It is really, and Lexington is where my son is now residing.
So is that anywhere near the Land of Lakes?
No, that's on the opposite side of that's on the western part of the state.
Well, it has a reputation all its own anyway. So, but there's something consequential about you moving to Kentucky. If you moved there toward the end of 2008, the first part of 2009, what happened in 2009?
Well, the interesting thing, and I did not know about this, was that the U.S. Mint was going to be on the 200th anniversary of Lincoln's birth, was going to be putting together a 4 releases for 4 different varieties of Lincoln Cents that they were going to be manufacturing and then distributing.
What were those 4 varieties?
Those varieties, well, there's the Cabin Cent, LP1, Lincoln Penny 1. The LP2 was the rail splitter cent that was released in Lincoln City, Indiana. Then there was the LP3, Lincoln Penny 3 release, which was Professional Life of Lincoln in Springfield, Illinois. And then lastly, his professional, well, his presidential.
Yes. So I've always referred to, and maybe I've been incorrect in doing so, the rail splitter one as his formative years.
That's correct. It's formative years, FY, and then you have the double dies where WDDR, and I don't know, not many people know the nomenclature, but WDDR stands for Wechsler Double Die Reverse.
Right. You can't see it because we're talking with you on the phone, but I'm going to go to the Wechsler website, and I'll just have it up, and I'll scroll through some information on the Wechsler website as we talk. So let me scroll to the top. And what I've done is I've sorted down to the listing of the formative years WDDRs. So let's pick up on that. You have been a major contributor in terms of identifying double dies reverses in that particular scent, have you not?
I have. I found there was 101 different varieties of Wechsler Double Die Reverse scents found from 2009 through early 2010. And then John series, ended the submissions for them. Because nothing was really being found that was considerable that he would want to forward them and attribute them. But the different varieties here in central Kentucky were amazing. My story on that one was in about March or so, Coin World came out with a front page picture of one of the new formative years rail splitter pennies that a wonderful person in West Virginia, Marilyn Keeney, was featured on there, and John had certified that one of the pennies that you found in one of the 2 package mint sets were actually double die pennies. And they had a picture of the double die penny on there. And lo and behold, I went to Walmart and picked out. They got some pennies and change, and it was the new formative years. And son of a gun, they had the double die that was on that from Coin World, in the Coin World article.
That's pretty amazing. Quick question for you. I'm looking at the Wexler site, and I'm looking at the WDDR-001, but right beside it, it has this quote, "best of variety." What does that mean?
I had taken, and John Wexler came up with the formative year best of variety, and I have a little excerpt here. If you don't mind, I'll read it very quickly. It's about how he took and he came up with the best of series, and I'm looking for it here. And I apologize.
That's okay.
A couple minutes, but he came up with this program, and he says he's and I'm paraphrasing from his site, from his doubledive.com site. To qualify as a best of series, the double die must fall into at least a significant category in the files. No minor or very minor varieties are included in this list. So the best of set, okay, which was 32 different pieces that he determined of the 101. He points out the markers and the stages and so forth on them, and he included taking and researching all of this and coming up with the list that he determined the criteria for the nicest and the strongest varieties, and he designated by this determination the official verdict as to which of these 101 varieties qualified, and they ended up with 32 that are considered best of.
So an individual could quite possibly build a complete set of the best of variety, hypothetically.
Yes, and I have made 4 of those sets for customers over the years, and I certify the sets when I make one up for a customer who's interested in it. It's very hard to find every one of the best of coins, and as I indicated in a recent email to you, I said that the here in central Kentucky, when we were finding, and I was mining all these rolls of pennies and so forth, thousands of rolls of pennies, and going through them, I noticed that around the country, other folks were finding what I couldn't find here in central Kentucky. So I would contact them, and we would trade.
Oh, that's great.
And get my inventory leveled out where I had probably about 90% of most of the double dies that were found.
Let me interject something right here, Mike. I have bought through eBay, through Mike's store on eBay, a lot of his coins, and he does a wonderful job of documenting what the coin is, which variety it is. It's done so with a picture. It's absolutely fantastic. What's your eBay store?
MF Coin Man 8Z2B.
That'll get you right to Mike's eBay store, and you can see the inventory of the double dies, and he's got great value out there. I really love my coins. As a matter of fact, I've got a lot getting ready to go into Annex for certification. I always, when I find my double dies, because I'm building a set of double dies, not just of the formative years, but of other coins, American coins and foreign coins, I always like to get them slabbed so I can preserve them. So that's all quite interesting. How long did it take you to build these complete sets of the best of variety?
Those sets are just my inventory in most cases. Right now, I'm short of a couple pieces because of availability issues. But I was friends with many of the searchers and the finders and the submitters to John Wexler over the years, and I've kind of lost touch with them. So it's very difficult to fill in holes here and there in inventory right now.
Yeah,
But I probably have 30 or 31 of the 32 right now in stock.
yeah, I may have to talk offline with you to get you to make up me a set if you can do that because I'd love to have it. And we'll talk about price offline, but you're just a great source for not only the coins but information. So can you tell me which ones that you were the primary contributor in terms of the identification? And oh, by the way, you're in a book, are you not? What book is that?
I am the 2009 Lincoln Penny Aerosense by James Porter. I contributed to his collection that he said that he was building in 2010 to 2012, and James was wonderful. He would again trade me for things I didn't have and that he had duplicates of. One of the things that the book does is it gives you an incredibly specific and still apropos today rundown of all the different double dies that were made, including some of the LP1 cabin set versions. And he explains the nomenclature, and everything in the book is very well written. And there's some big giants in the coin collecting world that were acknowledged, and I was very honored to be honored by James and him referring to me as a contributor to the book and to what it went. But you can still get the book on Amazon. James still has it out there, and it's a wonderful reference. I use it all the time.
Fantastic. And it was published in 2013.
Yes, it was, and it's on Amazon, I believe, and still can be found. It's a soft cover, regular size book, but it's a soft cover, and it's very useful.
I'm certainly going to pick up one. So, it's hard to believe that we're 13 going on 14 years on.
It's crazy, isn't it?
Yeah, it passes fast. I'm looking at let me see, what's the proper Wexler number here? I'll have to scroll up just a bit. So I'm looking at this one. It looks like a skeleton's finger. It is a WDDR-006, and that finger erupts from the cuff of the hand between the thumb and the index finger and goes out toward the spine of the book and then runs up the side of the spine of the book.
It's the finger. It's the large finger on Lincoln's left hand, and the index finger, excuse me, not the main pointing finger.
Yeah.
And that's what you see in the skeleton finger. Now, we have a history with that variety because here in central Kentucky, some of the very first rolls of coins that I got from the Walmart in the area here, which were available, I found the terminal die state of that variety, 006E. And if you look at that on the site, you'll see that that has a huge die crack that runs from 12 o'clock on reverse from the edge of the coin all the way down in front of Lincoln's face.
Oh man!
And it's an incredible coin. I found 4 of them.
Wow!
And they've gone for hundreds of dollars.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
Because they are so hard to find. But to me, it is of all the different varieties and stages with die cracks and so forth on it, it's the most predominant. Probably one of the most sought after um, variety.
Yeah.
The skeleton
I've got die cracks on the Lincoln Cent that start at the top of his head and go for most of the, probably 2/3 of the diameter of the coin, but it's not on the formative years. And since that die crack does exist on the formative years penny, that is a very, very, very late in the life of that die example. And so you were very fortunate to find them.
This one is paired up with the verse, which also has a major die crack down by VDB on the obverse, as well as some die chips on the die crack. So when I submitted this coin to John Wexler back in 2010, actually more towards the end of 2009, he said that it was absolutely the latest known, and the dies were definitely going to be failing, and he doesn't figure out how many coins were made. I told him I only found 4. And over the course of the years, I see very, very few of those being offered. I would probably say that less than 50 exist.
Yeah. So here's the thing that we probably failed to mention, and the listeners probably knew this in any case, the experienced coin collectors, but those that are just starting, all these coins are from the Philadelphia Mint that we're talking about.
Yes.
Yeah. And so there's very few eras and varieties of the Lincoln 2009 cents that have errors on them from the Denver Mint and the S Mint, but there are a few, but not in such numbers as we've seen from the Philadelphia Mint. So I got a question about the skeletal finger with the die crack. Not that you may have the current knowledge, but are you aware of what the latest sales figures were when they sold the last time, what they were?
You're talking about one of those coins?
Yes, what they might have sold for recently.
Yeah, I'm going to just mention that I have been in the $250 to $300 range.
And they're probably more than that now, would you expect?
Yeah. I found an extra one that I had in my inventory, and yeah, it sold for $250.
Yeah, yeah. And with the way things are headed with the coin collecting community, the interest that's being generated in all sorts of things called die cracks and double dies, uh, there's going to be more and more people chasing them. So I expect those prices are going to go up in the future. Yeah, that sounds still, I mean, for what it is, it's like a gem of a price for such a rarity.
And it's not, and as I've mentioned in previous emails to you, I studied large cents, which were the very first coins that the United States Mint made in 1793 on. And all these pennies were all made by hand. The dies were made by hand. Everything was struck by hand. And it wasn't until 1836 that they started introducing steam die usage at the mint to make the strike coins. Mm-hmm. So a lot of the coins that were made, especially the large pennies, you could make lots of mistakes on them, and they did. The mint workers did.
Yeah.
And they punched dies incorrectly. They missed letters. Or they inverted things. And they did made lots of errors in that. And from that is as an early American coppers member for quite a few years, I learned a lot of that and how dies progress and become worn and have and fail.
Yeah. So that helped you in your analysis and searches for the Lincoln cents in 2009.
Absolutely did. Yeah. And because of that, I mentioned to John that I was finding progressions of dies from the double dies, and one of the first ones that I found the progression on was the skeleton finger. Mm-hmm. And I showed him 5 different versions of how the die progressed on that. And he completely agreed with me that the 006E was the final die stage.
Right. For both. Now, just so our listeners understand, as far as the progression, that's the progression of the breakage the doubled die would kind of remain the same except for a minor amount of wear and tear, but the die crack was what was increasing. Is that a fair assessment?
Yes, and that die crack eventually. So when a die cracks, it forms it forms a damage to the die in which there's a channel, and then when the coin is struck, it produces a crack that is raised on the surface of the coin. So
Right.
that's where you see a die crack.
Yes.
That's exactly correct. As they are as the dies are failing, and then eventually it'll crack completely in half, and you can't use the coining anymore.
Mm-hmm. It's a fascinating to me. It's like artwork. I've seen. I've got some Indian cents from the 1800s, and I think one of them's got a crack that kind of goes off in three different directions, and so it's just phenomenal. But there's other things that could happen. There, in the earlier stages in the life of creating coins for the United States, they would have inverted mint marks or repunched mint marks or misplaced mint marks, so no mint mark at all. So it's not just damage to the die itself. There's other things. The reverse and obverse die could be rotated from each other. Lots of things could be happening that creates a lot of different varieties of errors. Is that correct?
Absolutely, and when I was looking through thousands of rolls of formative years, I found many different examples of die cracks, of over polishing. One of the things that the mint has that they notoriously do is that as a die wears and becomes less and less capable of putting an image onto a coin, they touch it up by
Mm-hmm.
by taking and polishing the surfaces of the coin, and so they have it results in things such as uh, we have coin. I've found coins, formative year coins, where the obverse of Lincoln has portions of his hair missing. It looks like he's got a toupee on.
Oh wow, I'd love to find
So
one of those.
yes, and so they over polish things, and they end up with imaging that gets imprinted onto the coin that looks really odd.
Right. So I'm looking again back at the Wexler website, and you
Yes.
have previously mentioned it a bit ago, but you talked about die markers. Can you kind of explain to the listening audience what die markers are and how you use them?
As a die starts to wear and goes through its progression from A to B to C to D, as John mentions it on his site, uh, things start to happen on the coin and on the coin that gets struck. And some of the things that happen is that you'll start seeing indentations into the working die, which cause raised images on the coin that you find in the rolls. And one of the things that it does is that it identifies, first of all, it identifies the variety, but it also identifies how that variety is progressing in the way of the different stages to where something happens to the die that causes it to 100% fail, like a giant crack.
Hmm. Hmm.
And many of the varieties, you'll see that the last variety found is usually some kind of die crack that appears through the lettering, through Lincoln shoulder, through the hand, through the boots that he has on his feet. You'll see that there's you'll see that there's die cracks along the bottom of the coin,
Yeah.
along the edges and everything that identify them. So you have to look for those. You look for those markers as helping to identify and verify who's right.
So you're saying those die markers will help the individual. If they think they found a WDDR 016, they can go to the website, Wexler's website, look at the different stages of the averse or the reverse, wherever those die markers are. And you can match up those die markers with the coin you have. And if there's an exact match, you can identify what stage of life that die is in and that it is, yes, verily, that particular version of the double die reverse.
That's correct. And John points out some of the predominant when he went ahead and was evaluating and cataloging these coins. But I will tell you that there are some surprises out there, such as if you get a very early coin produced from new dies, new working dies, those markers are not going to be there.
Right, right.
And so you have to just using your own evaluation method to be able to look at them, and it just takes time to do that. It's definitely a learned process.
Yeah, I mean, there's some very subtle doubling within the fingers of Lincoln's left hand that most people might look at it and they're just looking for that extra thumb or index between the thumb and the index finger, but they're not looking for that doubling between the fingers, and that's a very specific double die. I mean, here's one I've got shown on the screen. It's a WDDR 018, I believe. Yeah, and there's all sorts of doubling within the fingers or between the fingers.
And that's exactly why John picked out the 32 predominant ones as being best of. But I'm going to indicate to you, and I've talked about this to many of my other fellow searchers and collectors over the years, unless you know what you're looking for when you sit down and use high-powered, high-powered magnification in order to look between the fingers and around the coin, around that area where their double dies occur. If you don't pay attention, you will throw away or basically recirculate or circulate coins that are double dies.
Right, right.
And you're going to find, I believe, as time goes by, that many of the very minor double dies, Wexler double dies, in the formative years series are going to be have been wasted, and the minors are going to be harder and harder to find because nobody kept them.
Well, Mike, the only thing I've got to say about that is my mother. And you're going to say, what the heck does your mother have to do with all this? Back in the 60s, I had all those baseball cards and we were playing with them and we put them in boxes. And later on, I went back to my mom and I said, hey, Mom, what happened to all our baseball cards? She goes, well, when you stop playing with them in a couple of 3 weeks or so, I'd throw them out in the garbage. So my mother made everybody else's baseball cards from the 60s very expensive. So if you're recirculating those WDDRs on the 2009, you're helping all of us have ours become more expensive.
Well, it's as I have collected them over the years and still mine stuff, and every once in a while I'll get a mint box. One of the things that I'll mention very, very quickly is that book by James Porter has in it a catalog of boxes of mint 2009 P&D coins, what he found in them when he mined them for double die varieties. And they have been instrumental in helping me find certain double die, valuable double die pennies, including the skeleton fingers.
Right.
But you have to read those because the boxes are date time stamped, and you have to get certain boxes, and you have to get and you may pay through the gazoo for them, $40-50 a piece just to get one roll of P mint formative years pennies that has maybe 5 or 6 skeleton fingers in them, but it's worth it.
I found another version of it, and it's well on down in the list, but I've got a few of those I found through coin roll searching. The thumb is extra thick. Does that ring a bell to you?
Say that again.
The thumb is extra thick. It's not like a regular thumb, and it's a double die.
It's correct. It's a the thumbs are thick. They're sometimes they're double imprinted. Sometimes they have there's portions of another thumb below the thumb that's listed there. So you have to look very carefully at the thumb and the fingers and between the fingers to find the harder to find varieties. Most of the majors, though, the ones that are most predominant and are in John's best of series. Those have sometimes even one or two additional thumbs printed because of the way that the dies were prepared, and they were prepared improperly.
Mm-hmm. So how does that happen?
Well, as I indicated in something I had recently sent to you, and I would be happy to, how double dies occur at the mint. And let's see here, I had put together that this, I'm going to read very quickly. Today's coinage is produced from master images predominantly created by 3D computer imaging. The result produces a master hub that can be very accurately manufactured from a source computer for that denomination. And from this master hub, many master dies are created, which then have working hubs formed from them. And these working hubs are then used to produce the workhorse working dies, which are used to strike our business coinage. The United States Mint uses a simple single coin stamping process. So any doubling found on the struck coin is the result of the working die receiving the images placed on it from an upstream process that was flawed.
Right.
The process of creating multiple images on any of the master dies or working hubs would result of man-made procedural mishaps that occurred by the mint workers. So these workers would gently touch a master hub or master die to a blank, which imparted an image onto the center of this conically shaped blank. And when the workers went through the upper touching die to check the lower blank die for alignment, one or two of the following actions occurred. The die striking alignment was adjusted, and the lower blank die seated into its holder, minutely twisting its position unknowingly, or during the forceful final pressing of its image into the working blank die.
Yeah.
And the result created double images or a double die predominantly in the center of the image.
So what we're saying though is that the master working die comes down and stamps the image on the master die, stamps an image on the working die, and then when it goes back again, if they're just lightly tapping, they could actually have a rotated position or a slightly offset position and tap in another image on the working die. Now the working die goes off to the mint to be used in the production of coins. And when it's pressing upon the planchet, what results is a coin with multiple images. I mean, we have doubled dies, we have tripled dies. I don't know I've seen any quadrupled dies, but I have seen some tripled dies. So
the working, it seems like the working hubs were done properly, but then what happened was when they were making the working dies from the working hubs, those working dies were the process was flawed in the fact that the mint worker or workers touched the center of the conical working die and created an image onto it. And then when full pressure was exerted to finalize that working die, it either snapped in place or it minutely turned the die just slightly enough so that you got two images that were impressed into it.
And to me, however it happened, whether there was somebody working and not paying attention to what they were doing when they were setting and adjusting those cones in there to make the dies, I don't know how it happened, but the collecting community loves it. By the way, I'm looking at a WDDR 025, and it looks like there's a skeletal finger beneath the little finger. That's
exactly correct. On the 025, that's exactly correct. And then there's some images in between the fingers as you go up. And that's exactly what happened. That one was really off kilter.
Right.
It moved probably in almost 10 degrees.
That's pretty phenomenal.
It's a big mistake.
Right. And how many varieties of double dies do we know about presently?
Are you talking about with the formative years?
Yeah, only with the formative years.
Formative years in the P-Mint, okay, there are 101 different varieties that have been found.
And what's the likelihood of being able to build a set of all 101 varieties?
It would be impossible. And the reason being would be that the only coin that you cannot find is the FYWDDR 094.
And what's so special about the 9-4?
094. And the 094, there was only one coin that was verified by John Wexler as being a double die. And the gentleman who found it went ahead and gave it to James Porter for his collection, and it now resides in the American Numismatic Museum in Colorado Springs, Colorado. James Porter took his whole collection that he built, including a lot of coins that I had given him, and took that collection and then sent it to, donated it to the ANA.
So that's probably where it belongs too.
Exactly. And so consequently, you'll be able to get 100 of the varieties of the 101. And unless somebody finds them, and we've been waiting 13 years for somebody to find some additional ones, but nobody's found.
That's kind of interesting. I'm just kind of scanning down through here. Some of them, like the WDDR 050, has an extensive, I don't know, it's another index finger between the thumb and the index finger that wraps around the spine. This one doesn't. It doesn't touch the spine of the book, but it's fairly long too. It goes from the cuff of the hand all the way out up past the thumb, but it's separated quite proudly from the thumb. I mean, there's some just absolute wonderful double dies in this series. The WDDR 052, kind of similar, but it lays alongside the thumb and it extends well past the thumb. Which of these did you have something to do with in terms of identifying? Do you have a list of them?
I use the Wexler site almost predominantly. And when it comes to naming, the nomenclature for naming the double dies, I use exclusively the Wexler site.
Right, but I mean the ones that you found.
Pardon me?
The ones that you identified and submitted to Wexler. Do you have a list of those that you were the identifier on?
I do. I have around 18 of the early the cabin sense, early childhood LP1 cabin sense that I have, and then I also I have my list of FYs. Or I have six or seven that I have found. And my best find was the 006.
You know, Mike, that's pretty amazing because most people are very fortunate to find one. And you had how many? You've identified how many?
Between the LP1 and the LP2, I found almost 25.
25. Wow. And this list goes on and on. These are great pictures, by the way, on the Wexler website. If any of you that are listening want to identify what you might have, just go and filter on the Lincoln Cents for 2009, and it will double die reverses, and it will send you right over to the page that he has created that shows beautiful pictures with all the die markers for those particular cents. Mike, we're well approaching an hour in our discussion. I think perhaps we probably need to wrap up. Any final thoughts on this particular series of Lincoln Cents and the DDRs that go along with them?
They took with an incredible amount of effort to look through the pennies and find them, but it was, I call it the Great Penny, the Great 2009 Lincoln Penny Search, double die search that occurred in 2009, 2010. And it was historic.
It certainly
was historic in many different facets, because there are quite a few double die quarters being found, not so much in the pennies as we approach the new variety with the shield reverse, but it was a time in collecting where there was so much going on and there was incredible discovery that was going on, and they were there to discover. That was the fun thing about it. As you searched, you found things that were going on and things that were happening, and coins that were that had errors and mistakes on them. And the 2009 series was a dynamic series for especially the formative years rail splitter PMET coins. They seemed to be predominantly full of errors.
Hmm. And the motto of this channel is if you're not looking, you're not finding. So it kind of puts an accent point on that. They're out there. By the way, I didn't tell you at the beginning of the episode, but I have 50 rolls of the 2009 formative years of rail splinter coins coming in. And I'm going to be going through a lot of coin roll searches, looking for double dies in that lot. And I'll probably film a few of those coin roll searches. I may be reaching out to you to help me identify those ones that I do find.
I'd be glad to help you.
Hey, I appreciate it. One other thing, there is another type of error on the Lincoln rail splitter scent where he's seated on the log, and it's called, I believe, the floating Lincoln. Do you have any words about that?
Yeah, it's that coin, and I was just checking before we did this interview. I have 3 of them, and I received them from other searchers that had found them around the country. And so I looked at the coin, and that's exactly what happens when you over polish a coin. And so the low spots on a coin are raised on the dies. And so they end up polishing off those areas that get stamped deep into the coin, and you end up with a blank area.
Yeah, that's pretty amazing. I've seen pictures of it. I may be chatting with you about how I might acquire one of those floating Lincolns because it's such a unique error. You know, you see those types of coins and you think to yourself, I gotta have it, right? And I'm sure you do the same thing.
And it's fun when you look at it. I also there's another aspect of the Lincoln penny that you probably have bypassed a little bit, but it's called
Oh yes.
clashing coins. And one of the ones that is a predominant is the Whiskers Lincoln penny that has the clashing of the reverse die onto the obverse, and so you get raised areas underneath his chin, which they call them the Whisker variety.
Right. I've got a couple of those. I actually bought those a couple of months ago, I think it was. But yeah, there's all sorts of very interesting varieties in terms of errors out there. And if you're just starting as a collector, perhaps the 2009 is a series you might focus on because the chances of you finding an error or something different is going to be a lot higher than perhaps some of the other coins that you might be searching. All right.
I agree with that statement.
Yeah, I'm going to stop my share if I can. Let's see. Actually, I was not sharing. That's unfortunate, but they were looking at me the whole time we were talking. That's okay. We're going to go ahead and wrap up the discussion then. You got any advice for the collectors out there before we go?
Keep on searching.
Keep on
it
searching.
It just takes time and effort, and most importantly, when you see something that you don't understand, put it aside so that you can look at it again.
Absolutely.
Normally there's something going on.
You've been so kind spending the time with us. I really appreciate it. And hopefully we can do this again. Is that going to be possible?
Absolutely. No problem at all. I'd be happy to do it, Ron.
Super. Thank you so much. With that, guys and gals, I think we're going to call this a wrap. I hope something informative and helpful has been said that might be of interest to you. And if so, drop us a note down below, leave a comment. And if you have pictures of perhaps some of the Lincoln formative year pennies you found that you want to share, put those in an email to us and we'll put them on our show. With that, guys and gals, I do wish you the best. Be careful out there, and we'll be talking to you again. All the best. Thank you.